Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is making the rounds in the press. She's promoting her upcoming documentary on Diane von Furstenberg, and she is talking about Star Wars, and she has revealed that it will continue to inject feminism into the Star Wars franchise, her upcoming movie featuring Daisy Ridley and focused on Rey. In fact, she even claims that Rey is the heart of Star Wars. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com this morning. And this is what she had to say to Variety. She says, the story that interests me most is in Rey's journey as a female Jedi. That's how I can best bring my experiences to it. So let's look at that again. The story that interests me most is in Rey's journey as a female Jedi. It's not as a Jedi. It's as a female Jedi. She's putting that qualifier on there. That to me indicates feminism is being injected into Star Wars, putting that focus on her sex. She then went on to detail this. The greatest thing about Star Wars is that everyone has a personal connection to it. Everyone is passionate about it. And throughout the fandom, people have clear ideas about who should direct or what the stories should be about. I'm just drowning out those voices until I'm done. As a storyteller, I'm focused on drawing new moviegoers into the cinema and bringing a sense of nostalgia that will appeal to older fans of the series. I don't think older fans want nostalgia. They tried that with the sequel trilogy. It was an absolute disaster. They literally remade A New Hope with Episode 9. It was terrible. And then we saw what they did in The Last Jedi and Rise of the Skywalker. Absolutely atrocious filmmaking. Clearly, people at Lucasfilm not knowing exactly what Star Wars is and clearly not knowing what the Force is, something that George Lucas even recently said at the Cannes Film Festival just last month. So this looks like it's going to be an absolute disaster. And it gets even worse. She did this interview with SiriusXM. Let's listen to this right here.
Sometimes you walk in the footsteps of people and giants who've created worlds. And in the case of Star Wars, George Lucas's world and the filmmakers that have walked in his footsteps have set this world that they want young viewers to sort of walk into and have an understanding of the world. And at the heart of it, for me, is Rey Skywalker, is Daisy Ridley and her story. And
there you go. She said at the heart of George Lucas's world, at the heart of Star Wars, is Rey Skywalker and Daisy Ridley's story. Absolutely not. The heart of George Lucas's world is Anakin Skywalker. It is his fall from grace, fall from the Jedi. That's why we have the 3 prequels. It's literally his rise and fall within the Jedi Order. Is those 3 prequels. And then the original trilogy obviously was very much focused on Luke Skywalker, but the overall arc of all 6 films is literally the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker and then the redemption of Anakin Skywalker by his son, Luke Skywalker, who refuses to bow down to evil, refuses to compromise with the devil, and that strength moves something within Vader, within Anakin. He realizes that, saves his son from death by casting the Emperor Satan down the shaft, sending him back down to hell where he belongs, and saving his son from death, who is willing to sacrifice his life for him. He then asks for redemption and admits that all of the things that he has done was wrong. And obviously, Luke does indeed forgive him for that. That is what is truly at the heart of Star Wars. It is not Rey Skywalker, especially the character that's literally just there to replace Luke as a gender swapped Luke Skywalker in a bunch of knockoff films that the Walt Disney Company created. So let's listen to exactly what else she has to say here.
And taking her on an adventure to a Jedi Academy and sort of creating a world that is a natural dovetail to the story that we've seen her go through the last 3 episodes.
I don't think there is anything that can naturally dovetail off of those 3 films because they're just absolutely atrocious. A lot of the times they don't even like make sense with each other. They're just absolutely terrible. And it's interesting that they're obviously still trying to push this whole like Rey's going to rebuild the Jedi. Well, that's what Luke Skywalker actually did in the EU. So again, they are literally just trying to steal Luke's stories and give them to Rey.
And working with Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and the team over there in breathing life to characters that everyone loves and has fallen in love with, and finding new characters that the next generation of moviegoers will fall in love with.
Which characters from the sequel trilogy do people actually love? I don't think that people care about Rey. I don't think people care about Finn because they did him dirty. I think there was some optimism about Finn following the first one, but I don't think that there really is any more given the fact what they did to him. I don't think that people care really much about Poe Dameron either. I can't even recall some of the characters that they introduced in The Rise of Skywalker. They introduced this like woman who I guess was maybe has some ties to Lando Calrissian or something like that. I don't even remember her name. I don't think people care about the characters that the Walt Disney Company introduced in the sequel trilogy. There's a reason why they are going back to Clone Wars and the animated shows to bring back characters because those are characters that people actually know and recognize. It was before the Walt Disney Company for the most part. Obviously, I know Rebels was done within Disney, but a lot of those characters had been introduced previously in the Clone Wars. Obviously, Ahsoka, Maul, etc. So there's a reason why they're tapping into those characters rather than doing stories about the sequel trilogy. In fact, even if you go into they just did some like stories of the Empire. They're bringing like back Barriss Offee from the Clone Wars. It's literally what they're doing. They aren't creating new characters, and people aren't actually liking them when they do create them because they suck.
Had conversations with J.J. Abrams. I've had conversations with George Lucas, and then of course Dave Filoni, who's a big part of the Star Wars universe now.
So some massive red flags there. J.J. Abrams, the architect of the absolutely atrocious sequel trilogies. Why would you bring him in? Why would you even discuss him? He's basically persona non grata in Hollywood now, I feel like. But apparently these people are still going to talk to him. His style of movie making, people are fed up with it and are disgusted by it because he doesn't actually have really good, solid writing. It's all about the mystery box. There is no conclusion. There is no finish. There's no heart and soul to it. It's all about this like mystery box stuff. And he even talks about it in a TED Talk and how that's exactly what he does. George Lucas, sure, they're always trying to bring him up, but he's made it very clear that these people have no idea what they're doing with Star Wars and they don't understand it and they don't understand the Force. So whatever kind of conversation she had with George Lucas, I'm sure she didn't really glean a lot from him. And then Dave Filoni, what has he done? He's absolutely destroyed what a lot of people consider as the best Star Wars that Disney has put out in The Mandalorian. That has never been my opinion. I've always thought that The Mandalorian was subpar and mediocre from the very beginning. You could go back and watch the old reviews that I did on Bounty Hunter Comics. I was giving the first episode a 5 out of 10. So I never thought that stuff was just as amazing as what a lot of people thought about it. I thought the storytelling could have been so much better and should have been so much better. And then Filoni obviously came in. He did his Ahsoka series, absolutely terrible. He's clearly been highly involved in this Acolyte show, which is just an absolute like, train wreck. He was also involved in The Mandalorian season 3, which, as bad as what I thought, or as mediocre as what I thought the first 2 seasons were, this third season was a lot worse than those first 2 seasons. Obviously, all the girl power feminism crap that you got with Katie Sackhoff's character in that season as well, kind of supplanting Din Djarin and The Mandalorian. So this is not good. All these people that she's mentioning, these are all massive red flags.
We speak very often, and Kathy Kennedy and Carrie Beck and Simon Emanuel. I mean, I think the team is really taking time to make sure that we do justice to telling the story of Daisy, and you know, I think that she stands for something. We've seen.
Wait. She stands for something. Well, what does she stand for? What exactly does she stand for? She stands for something. Well, what is it? She doesn't know. Listen,
this wonderful journey she went on in episode 7, 8, and 9. And now it's like on to the next adventure. And how do we create a world and the adventure that we take her on?
What exactly does Daisy Ridley's character Ray stand for? For something. She doesn't even know what she stands for. I mean, this is how clueless these people are. They have no understanding of even the characters that they created, because the characters that they created are garbage. Because the sequel trilogy is trash. Like, she doesn't even know what the character stands for. They can't even say, like, she stands for the light side of the force. She stands for what is good and right. She stands for something, whatever that is. Who even knows? But this idea that they're pushing feminism into Star Wars is not unheard of. I've talked about this before. Always like to cite this interview here that Kathleen Kennedy did during an appearance in 2015 ahead of what is The Force Awakens, before it even came out to theaters. It was Fortune Magazine's The Most Powerful Women Summit, and she made it very clear that they were trying to inject feminism from the get-go after they purchased Lucasfilm from George Lucas. She said this: I think the interesting path we've had is the conversation that took place around consumer products, because there were a lot of companies that were in place who frankly didn't initially feel that Star Wars was for girls. And when you have a company situation where between Lucasfilm and Disney, we were all looking at this situation saying, no, with Star Wars, we have to change this. We have to make sure that we create products that are, in a sense, appealing to both boys and girls. What's wrong with that? Well, there isn't anything wrong with that, except that's not what you did. You literally tried to drive out the male audience by pushing feminism and these feminist characters into Star Wars. And you admit this. The fact that the company was brought by the Walt Disney Company has been amazing, because they very much support the fact that we are trying to grow in the workforce a number of women in executive positions and in all positions inside the company. So they're obviously also admitting here that they do indeed have sex-based quotas when it comes to hiring, because they're trying to specifically hire women, which is illegal. And with the movies that we are making and with the protagonists that we are putting in the stories, so I get a huge amount of support with that. So they're clearly saying that they're literally trying to push this stuff, the movies that we are making, the protagonists that we are putting in the stories. But we have 50% of our executive team are women, and 6 out of 8 of the people in my story group are women. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that would be surprised that we're making Star Wars movies, and the majority of the people involved in the development of those stories are women. And I think it's making a huge difference in the stories that we're trying to tell. And you can see why this has been an utter disaster for Lucasfilm. They are trying to push feminism into Star Wars. People are rejecting it. They're not interested in this brand of storytelling. And it has been really bad for Lucasfilm, for the Star Wars franchise. And in fact, all of her attempts to change the audience have failed, because she actually admitted this in the New York Times. Obviously, she's attacking Star Wars fans, but she does admit that she has not actually brought in this new female audience that she has tried to capture. Operating within these giant franchises now with social media and the level of expectation, it's terrifying. I think Leslie has struggled a little bit with it. I think a lot of the women who step into Star Wars struggle with this a bit more, obviously because they are lunatic woke ideologues that you've hired, and they're trying to push this evil stuff onto Star Wars. It's probably why they're struggling with it, because Star Wars fans are actually rejecting this stuff, because Star Wars is a story about good versus evil, and you have hired people that are literally trying to promote evil as good when it is clearly not. Just look at the Acolyte. Because of the fan base being so male dominated, so she admits that the fan base is male dominated. Right there, she admits that the fan base is still male dominated after almost a decade of her pushing feminism into the company and into the stories and characters that they are creating. So obviously, then she goes on to attack them and says they sometimes get attacked in ways that can be quite personal. So I guess criticizing the Acolyte is quite personal, right? That's why Leslie Headland is so sad. But this stuff is awful. This Daisy Ridley movie is going to be terrible. Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, the more she talks about it, the more she confirms that, clearly indicating she doesn't have an understanding of Star Wars, claiming that Daisy Ridley's Rey character is the heart of Star Wars. Absolutely not. And then clearly making it clear here that the story that she's going to be telling is about Rey's journey as a female Jedi, not as just a Jedi. Has to be about her sex. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.